Hey everyone! Welcome to Derailevant episode 2. You might be wondering, Leah, why does it say just chatting? Well, that's a fantastic question, and the answer is because Leah doesn't know what happened to her Derailevant scene, so she's using what she used last night. Happy birthday, Evil! Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic. We have the lovely Phyllipa with us today. We'll call her Phil though, because I don't really think any of us ever call her Phyllipa anymore, but that is her Twitch handle, so do be sure to check her out. Can we get a shout out first so people know to go follow her? We're getting cozy, having some tea, thinking positive vibes, you know? Thank you for shouting out, Jace. Just woke up to flash floods and tornado warnings. Oh no! Are you in Noah's Ark by any chance? Just checking, you know? Wasn't sure. Alright. Now that we feel a little warm and cozy. Already blocked, followed. Amazing. Now that we're a little warm and cozy, we can jump right into things. So we had discussed a bunch of the topics accidentally before planning a podcast, and that is how this podcast became a thing. So just be very happy that we talked about utter nonsense for an extended period of time. But we started talking about mental health and how we typically hear people say that they want mental health to be treated like physical health issues. Like if anyone has a limp or is using a wheelchair, typically that is looked at differently than mental health. But then we started diving a little further into even the people that claim to want mental health to be treated like physical ailments. There's still a lot of weird expectations for people with mental health problems. We're expected to somehow overcome our mental health problems to the extent of, okay, you acknowledge your mental health issue and you fully have to be able to handle it. And we discussed a little bit how, while that may seem fine and dandy, that's not very realistic for a 24/7 part of your life. You can elaborate on that. I know you have like specifics you also potentially wanted to bring up. Phil?
Yeah, so sorry, I thought that you were going to finish a sentence there and I was like,
no,
did it cut? Fine. I mean, we've had issues with my Discord specifically. But yeah, no, I think the specific thing that came up that we were talking about was I had been recommended a charity by my GP, my doctor, and it's one that is widely used in the UK, and that they go through a process of you get a phone call and they book you in for an appointment to have they ask you a questionnaire and they sort of gauge your required level of support based on that, and try and gauge like where you are depression wise, where you are anxiety wise, what you need help with, and on the basis of that they offered me both cognitive behavioral therapy and counselling, and they said that I could choose which one I wanted to do. Looking back, I really wish I'd gone for counselling because there is a lot that I feel like I need to talk about. But at the time I was like, I'd only just come to terms with the fact that I was talking about my mental health issues. And I was like, I super have a handle on this. Like, I know what's wrong with me. I just need to get better. Which was super just misguided of me. So I did the cognitive behavioral therapy. But they had a policy in place that if you missed 3 appointments, then you would be removed from the program. Now, I did that. I missed 3 appointments, and they were owing to my migraines. And I have suffered from migraines since I was about 15 years old. And it is possible that it is linked to my mental health, and also to a diagnosis that I only got very recently, which is polycystic ovary syndrome. So all those things are linked. And the really short-sighted thing there for me was, this is a charity that's specifically been put together to help people who have mental health issues. And they are saying that if you miss 3 appointments, then you will just be removed, discarded. That is the way that it made me feel like. My problem there is that it's like, okay, well, if we examine mental health issues such as depression, for example, common symptoms are a lack of motivation, a feeling that you don't deserve to get better and you don't deserve help, feeling incapable of getting out of bed or of taking care of your personal hygiene, of leaving the house. And on the flip side, for anxiety as well, getting up and leaving the house is something that could cause a lot of anxiety. Speaking to someone about your emotional and mental health issues could cause a lot of anxiety. And there are so many things that are inherent of the problem that the charity is claiming to try to address, that it felt so, I don't know, just like short-sighted. I said it.
Disconnected too, because it's a very odd thing that to prove that you want to get better when it comes to mental health. Because I had the same thing when I went to an outpatient program. To prove that you want to get better, you have to meet certain criteria. And I agree in the extent of, if someone doesn't want help and doesn't want, I will use get better loosely because we know how we feel about that. It's not necessarily going to be cured. You're just going to be in a better position handling of it. But it's very odd that they think proving you want this bad enough means very much acting as if some of your mental health issues aren't genuine obstacles. And I think that's something you spoke on before.
At that point, it's like, okay, so it feels like you're almost trapped in that sense. It's like, okay, so you have these mental health issues, and yet you were perfectly capable of, taking care of yourself enough to get yourself to this appointment. So how bad can it really be?
Yep.
Whereas on the other side of things, it's like, okay, if you can't make it to the appointment and you are removed from the program, at that point you are in dire need of help, but you're being refused that help in that capacity. Now obviously there are other situations, there are like other things that you could turn to, but like as the first port of call for GPs across the UK to be saying, we recommend this service, that just did not seem acceptable to me. And I have only heard bad things about this charity. I have had a couple of other friends who have had bad experiences with this charity. Now obviously my experience is limited, but yeah, it confounded me.
It makes you
did not understand.
It makes you question yourself and your issues, because like just as you said, I would wonder, am I actually having that many issues if I'm able to somehow fight my mental health problems to show up to these appointments? And then in addition to that, I would think, am I too far gone that I really am not deserving of help? So I can't get myself to go to these appointments, so I'm too far gone. I am above the threshold. And it kind of goes back to a topic Vita and I spoke about before, where mental health is always for some reason made to be palatable. And it's weird that even in a charity that's meant to directly help those with mental health struggles, they would still kind of only choose people that are palatable, that are what they think have the best chances at a success rate to maybe up their success numbers, because the difficult cases are going to be the ones that are having a harder time showing up to those, are having a harder time getting out of bed in the morning, are really struggling with their day-to-day lives. And I'm not comparing mental health problems. I'm not trying to say that one deserves more support than the other, because I would say that like I was still able to get up and go to my appointments and stuff, but I would argue were those more outside forces or myself doing that. So it's up in the air, but everyone does deserve help. Doesn't matter what your mental health problems are, but there should be more of an understanding for people who are so down in the trenches of their mental health, maybe the very beginning, early stages of starting to address it, that they need a little bit of an extra foot up. And that's okay. That shouldn't be shamed. That shouldn't be looked down upon as weird. And that definitely shouldn't be responded to by being kicked out of a program. I get kicking out of a program when it's one where you're not supposed to use substances or something. I get that to an extent, but typically they still should line you up with something else. I only get that in the sense of they don't want other people around you triggered. That's usually the places that I've heard about that kick people out for usage, for self-harm, for anything like that, is because of the potential to trigger other people. But in all of these things, and mental health is involved in, substance abuse, self-harm, all of those things, in each of those things, it is known that relapse happens. It is known that even your normal mental health without any addiction problems or whatever, you're going to have relapses to an extent in your mental health. You're going to have these like ebbs and flows of struggle and feeling more like you have control. That's just a normal part of this being a part of your life.
Yeah, it's getting better is not just a gradual incline for the entire time, and it does look different for different people, and it's amusing because obviously the idea of we want mental health to be treated the same as physical health. In this situation, it's being treated the opposite, in the sense that if anything, certainly in the UK, there is a trend of for physical health waiting until it is so bad that it can no longer be ignored. Whereas in this situation with the mental health, it's like we will wait until you are that bad to ignore you, and we will only treat you when you are in early stages, or at least that is the sort of the way it feels like with that particular situation. In terms of of the physical versus mental health issue, it frustrates me a lot because it does seem to be looked at as very other, but at the end of the day, mental health is physical health. It's an issue with your brain, it's an issue with your chemistry. Even if you say it's a purely psychological thing, that is still your brain. That is still,
it's a part of you.
Yeah, it's very odd to act like, it's all a big ethereal sort of thing. It's many scientists have already concluded that mental health issues are often hereditary. So yes, it's like I say, it's very odd to just sort of treat it like it's some other thing.
It was interesting that you said how the UK treats it is they wait and they want you in this sweet spot, and I have felt an incredibly opposite overall in the US, that they want you to be so far gone that there's a concern of potential self-harm, suicide ideations. They want you there before they typically will take you seriously. I remember in college, the only way my friend could get seen is if she told them she needed to be put on suicide watch. And that's fucking crazy. Why would you not want to interfere well before that? That also doesn't mean that we should exclude the whole range. You should want people right at the beginning who have the ability to contact the resources to get help and are also aware of their issues earlier on. The people in the middle who are been living with this for a bit, thought it was nothing, it seems to actually be really impacting my life. And then people are like, help, I'm in dire need. Those all are treatable.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely something that that issue that we come across is a huge support for the idea that we should be embracing mental health long before it's a problem. Whether it's mental health that's positive or negative, from a very young age, I think, in my opinion, children should be taught how to interact with themselves, interact with their minds, their mental health, how they're feeling, so that even if it's just that you are stressed at work or something like that, that is still your mental health suffering. And it is so much better to learn preventative measures. And I think this is something that's said about physical medicine a lot, is that it's preventative medicine is much better than trying to cure something. And I agree with the concept that I can't remember who it was. It's I think it's like an internet celebrity, but someone said that like that everyone should get therapy, whether you feel like you have an issue or not. That everyone should be attending some sort of therapy, just to check themselves out. Because I personally had very, very, very bad mental health for probably most of my life, and I only realized it when I was like mid-teens, and then I didn't even realize the full extent of it until I was early 20s. Like, and I'm still sort of having eureka moments where I'm like, oh, that's why that stresses me out, or that's why, like, making connections between things that have happened in my life. And I've like been on a massive mental health journey myself, within myself. I've still never been to therapy. I've still never gotten counseling. I can only imagine how much that would help me. And again, like coming back to the whole situation with the charity, it's like it is my mental health that has pushed me or made me procrastinate over actually getting some sort of professional help because of my insecurity and my thought like, oh well, someone else deserves it more, or I should be capable of dealing with this on my own. And objectively I look at that and I'm like, that's bull. I wouldn't say that to a friend. But I think something that that I say to other people a lot is like, there is a difference between knowing something objectively and believing it wholly yourself. And I think that's why like talking about mental health from a very young age is very important.
I didn't
I don't know
realize
if
how
any of that
important
makes
that
sense.
was. No, it did. It made sense. It's I don't think I realized how important it was to be able to just talk about mental health stuff until I had friends with mental health issues. I was privileged and lucky in the sense that my parents, I was lucky and privileged to be able to have therapy, and from a young age I've been in therapy, but I wasn't surrounded by people who wanted to talk about it. And I think that's still harmful. So like my parents saying stuff like they don't want to walk on eggshells around me was still harmful when they knew I was actively in therapy trying to get better. And I'm not saying they didn't feel genuine frustrations with me at time, and I'm not trying to excuse anything when I was like a very, troubled, rowdy child. But it is really, really helpful to have your life be surrounded by other people who have similar experiences in terms of mental health and see how everyone handles it differently, what works for them, and they also make it less awkward to talk about. Like, I don't feel as much of a stigma talking about my mental health problems since having more people in my life that readily talk about their mental health problems. It just makes it seem like, oh, this isn't weird. Like, if anything, it's like decently common. Like, we've all got something that we're fucking dealing with. But it's interesting because go.
I was just gonna say, I super agree with that. I used to feel when I was younger, and I think, it sounds very cliche, but when I was younger I used to think like, that why am I so different, why am I so alone and such like that. I don't feel like that anymore. If anything, I feel very much the opposite, and I'm like, I'm not sure neurotypical people exist. I don't know if I've found any yet. Like, it feels like everyone is going through something.
I completely agree. I do think more people, I'm not trying to say everyone has a mental health problem. I don't agree with that to an extent, but I think everyone can have episodes. Everyone can have like a time where they're going through something. So I still think having those discussions and recognizing them is important. It was interesting because as we were talking about it, I was about to say, oh, I'm not trying to excuse my behavior. And that's literally, I think, how our whole discussion on this started, is people feeling like it's a tricky topic, because on one hand, yes, I don't think anyone has the right to just excuse being a rude person because of their mental health. I agree with that. But I think yep.
It can be a reason why perhaps things happen, but it's not something to hide behind. The same way that that you would expect someone who, you know, perhaps lost their ability to walk, you would expect them to, you know, go to physiotherapy to try and get better. But you wouldn't expect them to be able to just walk just like that.
No.
I think it's a similar situation in that sense. And I do want to clarify, as you said, it was a tongue-in-cheek comment, about, you know, I don't know if I met anyone neurotypical. I actually don't know if I have, but
right.
Yeah, it's you know, I think it's the statistics. 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health problem every single year, and it's a fluid thing. It's not a categorical thing. It's not like this is a person with mental health issues and this is a person who's neurotypical. It's you know, you might be feeling stress this year, but next year you might be in a really great place, but you know, your sister is, you know, in a really bad place. And yeah, it's a fluid thing as much as your physical health is a fluid thing.
Exactly. And I think that's a really big thing, because I think a lot of people who've maybe never either been diagnosed or have never felt that was an extended period of time in their life, maybe don't recognize that they could still be going through something temporarily, and that's still impacting their brain chemistry, that's still impacting their day-to-day life. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay, if you're grieving because of the loss of someone, that's still hurting, that's impacting you, that's gonna do stuff to your brain, and that's okay. And it's okay to give yourself a little bit of space and grace in terms of your grief, and letting yourself have moments. Letting yourself have moments where you're a little more down, where you're a little extra upset, where you're missing that person a little bit more. And then still recognizing that you can take steps to help support yourself, to give yourself the best chance of not sitting in the despair.
It can be difficult, because I think there's a lot of push and pull. There's a lot of, you know, today I just want to wallow in my misery, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's you need to just feel the way you're feeling, and
it's
sometimes it's
you say that, because it's normally really looked down upon. So that's very interesting you say that.
But I think something that I think really addresses this very, very well, in my opinion, is Inside Out, the Pixar movie. And if anyone has seen it or hasn't seen it, basically there is spoilers. There is a situation in which this teenage girl moves away from the place where she grew up. So she's moving away from her home, from her friends, from her school, from her hockey team, and she is obviously not wholly happy about that. She experiences, you know, some amount of grief and depression, and her mum asks her to be supportive of her dad and keep smiling, and she tries to do so. And the personifications of her emotions in her head, you've got joy and sadness and anger and jealousy and fear, jealousy or disgust, but joy has always been in charge of this girl's head, because she's generally had a very happy childhood. Suddenly, sadness feels a desire to start touching her memories, and things that were happy for her once become sad. And joy tries her hardest to not let sadness do that. This girl spends as much time as possible trying to be happy when she cannot help feeling sad. And I think that is a really good example of how it's sometimes you just need to feel that sadness, and you just need to like give yourself some time to just be like, I am sad, I am going to let myself feel that I'm going to cry, I'm going to watch sad films, listen to sad music, you know, pig out on ice cream or something like that. Do things that don't make me feel good about myself but are comforting in that moment. The hard part is like figuring out, okay, enough's enough. And that is always like something that I feel like friends are really, really helpful to have for that. And giving you that nudge to be like, okay, we're still here, we still care about you, we still want you around, you are capable of doing these things. But I think it does always come down to you eventually finding that motivation yourself. And it's very, very hard to be a friend to someone who's going through mental health issues, because you can't make something click for them. I think that click really has to come from you individually as a person. And sometimes there doesn't seem to be any reason for it. Like, as someone who has felt that way, as someone who has gone from the situation of like content warning suicide, like from feeling like, you know, I wanted to end my life and that I would never ever be happy ever, and that I was always going to be miserable, to now feeling very, very strong and like I can do things and I can move forward with my life and I can be happy and successful and be supported, which is something I never felt before. I never felt like I could be supported. But that click just had to come for me, and I probably wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for people hovering at my periphery. Just, you know, being there and reminding me that I'm wanted, and that there is still things to live for, and it comes out like cliches eventually, but it's very odd. It's very odd, but you kind of realize they're cliches for a reason, and eventually. I'm sorry, I went very, very rambly. And,
no. That's what this is for. Like, we're opening up about things that are incredibly personal. So like we're going to kind of dive into stuff because we've lived this. This is our real life experiences, and there's some difficult parts of that. And I completely resonated with the fact that you said when you were in such a dark place and like didn't feel like anything was worth living for, because I super have been there as well. And to think that feeling will ever go away when you are in it is so not at all fathomable. And to be in the place I'm assuming we are now based on what you said, to be in the places we are now, it's so weird to look back at old me and think how stuck I was. Think how
I get that.
Dark my day-to-day was. And that is yet again not to say that I don't get depressed still, don't get anxious, don't have my PTSD episodes. Like, all that shit still is here. But I was in a state of depression that was much lower than I have ever been. And I did not ever think that that's something I was going to overcome. I really, truly did not feel that way in those moments. And I don't even feel like I'm that person anymore. Like, that person is so disconnected from who I am. I look back at that, I'm like, how did I get there? I don't even know the path that I took to get down that low. Because on paper, like, not that shit things haven't happened. Like, of course, like, I had some really hard parts in my life. And I get why I have mental health problems, but I don't get how I got that low, oddly enough, despite everything.
It's interesting. I think the word resilience can be a bit of a sort of a buzz term in terms of mental health. That you grow your mental resilience and your emotional resilience, but I think it's true. Like a muscle, your brain or your chemicals or whatever. Like you do. God, this sounds really. You go through so much shit that eventually you know, you get your emotional like muscle gets so strong that you're just like, I can deal with this. I can lift this baggage. Like,
I like that. I like that view.
Motivational t-shirts to come.
Oh my god, yes. Unicorn. I want to just touch on what you said. I totally can empathize and resonate with the fact that, like, I still have had days that are incredibly dark. But I would say if you're in a consistent dark place, I definitely don't want you to feel like, especially around like us, that you ever have to put on a front. You never have to, and just as Phil said before, you really shouldn't force yourself to fake it, because it actually is pretty exhausting. All that energy you're putting into faking being okay can be put into doing even little things every day that just help you feel a little bit better, even if for a moment. I remember when I was in DBT therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, in outpatient care, and I specifically remember when I was in like such a dark place then, I had to have a list of little things to do for myself each day, and like little things that were just a tiny moment of pick me up. So tiny, like I would go and get myself a soy chai latte because it was just something I enjoyed, and I would get myself that. And I would listen to one of my favorite songs. I would write for an hour. Like very tiny things that sound pretty minute in the grand scheme of things, but all those little things add up, because knowing I could have, in the entire chaos of my life at that point, I could have this one moment where I just sat down and sipped my tea was oddly so needed. Oddly so needed to have that moment of just, even if it's a minute. That was a whole minute that I didn't feel like I was putting on a facade, and I didn't feel like I was carrying all of my shit at once.
I think I can attribute, or I can correlate a lot of breakthroughs that I have made with deciding to do things for myself. I think one of the biggest things that I started, that sort of started me on this journey, was I started a gratitude journal, that I drew things every day that I was thankful for or made me happy, and then that transitioned into I just drew every day. I just drew things for me in a journal, and that was something that really helped me to sort of focus on me. One of the biggest breakthroughs for me recently was that I started streaming, and that is something that I just do for me, and I just sit there and I get praised by everybody for being so, me. And
True.
Like it's definitely a massive part.
I'm just checking on chat again. It really is one reason I enjoyed house sitting for my parents. My mentality has hit a point where cleaning at home isn't easy. It isn't messy with food and dishes, but a lot of clutter from projects I've started but haven't continued, such as the dice making and just a lot of stuff around. I feel crowded but lack the energy to fix that. But house sitting in the parents is like a vacation from that. Despite only being a 3 to 5 minute drive from home and having to pop in to feed the fish still, I know that I know that one really well too. When I quit streaming video games and focused solely on streaming D&D, when I do, it was one less thing that felt like a chore. And that's major. And I think my friend Beta has taught me all the time that why are you doing things just to do them if you hate them? Like, if you are getting up in the morning, you're like, I fucking dread doing this. Stop doing that. Like, obviously, some leeway for the fact that life is a thing and we don't always get to do things we want. But when it's something that you do have the power to say you don't want to do it anymore, such as streaming games when it wasn't making you happy, 10,000%. Fucking don't do that anymore. Don't do stuff just to do it. It is... Think of how much energy you have to put into D&D, right? That is a lot of emotional energy, physical energy, everything. And that was being sucked away by gaming, which you weren't enjoying. And D&D is not a walk in the park. That's not like, easy peasy, I'm just gonna like casually do that. But I feel like I even notice my stamina is longer for things that I enjoy. If I'm really amped up about something, I'm like, I could keep going. Okay, except for the fact that I have work in the next morning, but I could keep going otherwise. That's a big deal because I've had chronic fatigue for a decent amount of time. And I am sure that some of it, if not all of it, is because of my mental health stuff. My anxiety typically operates up here. I get told that regularly, that I am just stressed all the time.
I was reading what Unicorn is saying.
Unicorn said? Oh.
Past stream I was a player and we had so much fun. It was an amazing time. And next stream I'm the GM and it's our Dungeon Crawling campaign with high risk of TPK.
Oh my god. Just the thought of that gets me excited and stressed simultaneously. I love that though. I think I've realized more and more that I need to push myself where I have to and where it makes sense, and not push myself in things that's like, why? Why though? Why are you wasting the energy there? It makes no sense. And I'm saying that now, and then I'll forget and not take this advice, but I'll replay this for myself because it's incredibly important to stop doing things that are unnecessary that you know are taking away from all the things you want to actually accomplish. A slow learning curve for me.
I think that's a frustrating part of life in general, is that it's like, I would love to be doing creative stuff full time, but it's not currently financially viable. So that means I need to get a job. My only experience is in customer service, administration, case handling, office-based jobs. And while those certainly pay enough to look after my bills, they also drain my emotional and creative energy. And my mental health suffers every single time I get one of these jobs. So it's this awful little limbo.
Yeah, and then you're stuck in the cycle of it. 'Cause you're like, okay, I have to get another shitty job because I still can't do what I want. I'm curious though, have you thought of what you would need to be, I'm assuming, making in creative endeavors in order to not have to take on a job that is, you know, mentally draining?
Yeah, so it would need to be approximately the same as I make in jobs currently.
That's hard, I get it.
And I mean, it would be about 1k a month, which doesn't sound like a huge figure.
Yeah, but I know how, if we're speaking mostly on streaming, not with like commissions or whatever, because I don't know that world, I'm not going to pretend to know that world, but streaming, yeah, I know how incredibly hard it is to hit that amount. I've never hit that amount, and the idea of needing to hit it to go full time, to hit like a certain amount, of course, to like cover bills and whatnot, that's daunting. That's fucking daunting. That's not easy peasy. That's not a walk in the park. You could have one really good day and you could have the next 4 streams where no one subs, you know, no money is made. Like, that happens. It's completely unreliable.
Yeah. And I mean, this is like probably a super like sensitive topic for me, in terms of me like feeling down on myself, but like this is definitely like a whole procrastination issue for me, of doing the bare minimum and not taking enough chances or pushing myself enough, and not planning for doing something when I did have a secure, stable job and I could save up money to do things like, you know, order pins or, you know, key rings or prints or something like that. And it's something that I do constantly get down on myself for, but it's a case of like being scared. And yeah, it's odd. If it was someone else, if it was a friend, I would be like, no, that makes sense. Of course, you know, it's a scary thing, and
doing it for
artists
yourself
get taken advantage of or dismissed, and yeah, it's that one's like a very close to my heart.
We don't have to keep talking about it if you don't want to.
The thing I get the most upset with myself about.
Is it a topic you'd like to move on from? Because I'm happy to do that.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. I just don't know what more to say up on the matter.
No, that's completely fair. I was more gonna just talk in like generalities now, where it's more like I get the fear of taking the risk on yourself. Like, I definitely, granted, I'm gonna preface this that I come from an incredibly privileged position in terms of I am going to go full-time and I'm able to quit my job and I'm able to move back home with my parents, and that is like not something everyone can do, and I'm not trying to claim that this then works for everyone. Like, wow, here's the roadmap, just quit your job and convince your parents to let you live with them. But in just specifically taking risks on yourself, I completely understand the fear of that. The fear of, it's so different to almost fail at your desk job. You're like, my heart's not attached to that. Like, I don't give a fuck about this job. Like, I need it for the bills to be paid and that's it. But it doesn't mean that I'm a failure if I fail at that job. You might feel bad, but it's not the same as if you felt like you failed at what you love the most. Like, that hurts in the soul. That doesn't just kind of bum you out. That would really, really, truly, deeply hurt. And I think the way that I've started to look at more things is just, especially bringing in mental health, I realized, thinking about it more, that there were moments in my life where I truly wanted to give up. We talked about trigger warning, suicide and everything, but those were times where everything could have been over. And I'm grateful that I'm still here. And since at any moment, not because of that, but like because life happens, accidents happen, anything could happen and I could not be here. I don't want to have only ever sat at these desk jobs for the rest of my life. That scares me a lot. And if it means being a little bit reckless, even if it's not you can quit your job and like fucking pursue something full time, I think it's worth taking even small risks on yourself. Even if you're just like, I'm gonna, with my first paycheck of my next job, order a bunch of pins. I think sometimes it's good to just take those small risks on ourselves because we fucking deserve it. And when no one else has our back, we have our back. There's nothing more rewarding than saying to yourself, I fucking believe in you. Like, you can do that. And fucking giving yourself the chance to. I think even in small ways.
It's very frustrating to only be learning a sense of self-worth now.
Oh my god, I feel
when you're taught in school, like, this is how to remember dates for history, and this is how to do algebra, and this is how to create effective prose in English and such. And then they go like, okay, so you are good at these subjects, this is how you could get a job doing this and you could support yourself doing that. Or like, it's almost like they never even say that. They never even say you can support yourself. They just say, these are the jobs you can get. These are the grades you can get. These are the universities you can get into. Mm-hmm. It sounds hippy dippy AF, but no one at any single point ever said, this is how you can be happy. This is how you can explore yourself. This is how you can enjoy life.
Oh my God.
This is how you can foster a sense of self-worth.
That's beautiful.
At no point is that ever talked about, and it's staggering.
It's such a shame. It has, I think, truly cut down the number of creative people in the world, because if people were encouraged more often to do things that make them happy, you would have more creativity. You'd actually probably have more innovation. And overall, we'd have less mental health problems that are incredibly obstructive of someone's life. I'm not saying we wouldn't have any mental health stuff.
Look very different, it's
right. Also that, because I think,
feels right.
especially, I mean, I don't know how the UK is. I just know from speaking to our friends in the Netherlands that like there's a lot more understanding to an extent of mental health and giving days off for mental health issues. That is not a thing in the US, and I even had to ask for a mental health day last year because I literally had a panic attack and a breakdown at my desk and was crying on the phone to my mom. It was so bad. And my boss was like, you can't take a mental health day. Like, that's not a thing. I was like, okay,
My
I'll
God.
just sit here crying, don't mind me.
Jesus, that is stunning.
Yep.
It's staggering to me. I have been incredibly lucky, very, very privileged in that when I was going through my suicidal period, I had a team leader who supported me and did everything he could to make sure that I basically had the full extent of what the company's policies would allow, and that he tried to look after me as much as possible. And he did not understand what I was going through. I think that was very clear. But he obviously had empathy. He tried to understand what I needed, and he did his very, very best by me. And that is so, like, I cannot overstate how lucky I was. That wasn't policies protecting me or that was, I was just really lucky that I had that person as my team leader, because I know that there were other people in the same job as me in different teams who did not have that in their team leader. And like, although like the help was potentially there for them written in the policies, like they were not supported, and they didn't know, they weren't told. And so yeah, the concept that you don't have that, just staggering. It just astounds me.
It's so crucial to have people that validate you in your life on your experience in your whole mental health journey, and don't treat it just like, oh, you're just overly sensitive. It's like, no, I actually have fucking mental health problems, and things that may seem like they should roll off my back aren't, because of a litany of other shit that's already going on in my head, and that thing just straw that broke the camel's back. And the misunderstanding towards that and the dismissiveness that I've experienced towards that was very damaging when I was younger. I don't think it's as damaging to me now, because I've gotten more to a point where I'm like, fuck you. Like, you don't want to be understanding? Like, fuck you, fine, whatever. But I do think that for many people, it's incredibly damaging. It's the difference between them validating themselves even with going and getting help and recognizing there's a problem, versus being like, yeah, I should just suck it up and deal. It's harmful.
Yeah, I mean, you say about sucking up and dealing, especially in the workplace. When I was about, I think it was 21 or 22 or something like that, I went into a very small company when I moved to Brighton. Moved out of my family home, straight out my family home into a brand new town with a partner who was like 6 years older than me, and I went to deal with this CEO who, you know, it was his company, it was his baby, and he was abusive towards his colleagues, like verbally. He was emotionally manipulative. He bullied me about my weight, and although I understand where he was coming from, my partner at the time implored me to just sort of sweep it under the carpet.
Oh my god,
the
number of times.
To not respond to it. And I know why he was saying that, because he was worried about my security. I remember, I mean, just from using like funny facts there, I remember I went and got a bacon and cheese pastry for my lunch at one point, and the CEO came in and he sort of made a comment about, like, you know, like, oh, you know, that's very healthy of you, sort of thing. And I glared at him. I just didn't even respond. I just glared at him because I didn't trust myself to say anything, but I also was not just going to laugh it off. I felt like that was a pretty neutral like response for me.
I don't even think they deserved as neutral of a response as that was. Like, you should just be like, oh, why do we think this was appropriate? Would you like to explain that comment further?
Yeah, I honestly, he would have fully happily have explained why he thought it was appropriate. He was not great.
Oh, so you knew. You were like, I'm not dealing with that, not opening that.
Yeah, no, I super would not give him the time of day ever again.
Don't blame you. It's just such an odd thing where I get that to an extent some of it's just ignorance and not understanding stuff. Fine. Like, people have to be educated on things, learn, but I don't get the level of just dismissing and not caring.
I cannot compute, basically. I can't fathom being that way. It doesn't work in my head. But like I say, like, I understand why my partner said the things that they said to me, even though it was lacking in empathy in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a product of your environment. You're brought up to sort of, especially for him as a man, to be brought up to sort of basically believe that, you know, any emotional unfairness that he was feeling, he should probably squash.
Yes. Yes, he should just suck it up and deal.
So yeah. What Jay says about how far do we call it encouragement versus feeding dreams that may not necessarily come true and creating a sense of false hope. I think it is very, very possible to encourage people to try new things and enjoy them, and also not create false hope by saying, okay, this is hard, this is what you need to do to be good at this and succeed in this way, but also like just to try just to try new things just because you can, just because like the concept of like the fact that when we are in school we are sort of told, you know, go into, you know, the end of school and choose your topics based on what you think you're going to be good at, based on what job you want, go to university based on what job you want, and then go into like trying to find apprenticeships and going into like the workplace based on what job you want. Like, there is so much, you know, from the age of probably about 13-14 years of like trying to funnel you towards one particular job role in life, and that is just highly unrealistic, and incredibly narrowing for an individual who is capable of so many things. And slightly related is also like, I feel like there are things that are gatekept because of this sort of approach to doing things that you're good at and being good at things, is like things that are really good for your mental health, like singing and dancing. And we've gotten to a point where we're like, you can only do this if you're good at it, and we're down on people who are like, you know, oh, you hit a bum note or something like that.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, oh well, your drawing isn't exactly perfectly in perspective and stuff like that. And it's like, these are just things that human beings do, that they just do to express themselves, just to be happy. Like you were saying earlier about like we'd have more creative people. I think I've heard many times people speak to me about how like when they were younger they used to really enjoy drawing, or they used to really enjoy like playing guitar or something like that, and they stopped doing it because they were told that they weren't good enough to do it professionally, or that it was just a silly hobby, or, you know, that they weren't talented. And it's like, it doesn't matter about that stuff. It's okay to say to someone like, you know, if you want to make a go of this, these are the things that you'll need to work on. But that's also,
I also
like,
think it's okay if they ask for that, because I think sometimes people give so much unsolicited advice, and it's like, they might not even want that. I mean, they may not at all have a vision to pursue this as a career. Let them just fucking enjoy what they're doing. They're having a good time.
That is exactly what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
Yeah, like that is also no. It's good. Like the proviso there is if you want to make a go of this.
Yeah.
It's just on that note, I feel like you may have a potential future podcast that may deal with what Jace is talking about.
I think so too.
Somewhat in terms of like feedback and.
Oh, you are. That is a freaking good point. It's not planned yet, but Phil is hinting towards a potential podcast. So, I will not announce info on it yet since the other party member has not confirmed this podcast yet. But I am excited because it does totally take from that. Which is like perfect. We could like nicely flow into the next one if I get that all sorted. But yeah, I know this one was shorter, and I'm sorry, guys. I will give myself a little bit of credit. It was a really long night, and I'm tired. And I have to go to band practice, which is my first full band practice, and I'm nervous because I've never really performed in person with anyone but Rico for like practice purposes. Like typically it's only been Rico, so it'll be interesting, you know. It's a little living on the edge. But if you've not followed Phil, please go do so. I assume most of you do, but if you don't, for some reason, you are doing yourself a disservice. When I say Phil is the most magical human being, I'm not at all just blowing smoke up her ass. I like genuinely mean that. And you will feel like you've entered a fantasy world just sitting in on her stream, so I recommend it. I appreciate you, Phil. Thank you for doing this with me. This was nice. And like I feel like we just needed to like chill little thing, you know? Even though it was deep stuff, but I feel like we still somehow find chill vibes within that. I appreciate it. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.